In this section, we're going to be taking a look at using effects, both in the box using Reaper and outside the box using the Mackie 1640i. When using Reaper, we're going to use the integrated internal software to modify the sounds in the manner in which we wish. That way we can use the effects that we want. With the exception of the EQ, the Mackie has no external effects. So if we want to use them, we'll have to add them externally. This is done using either the insert or the aux sections. To access those sections, let's take a look at the back of our mixer. This starts off with the insert section, and the aux section is right here on the bottom. The insert section and the aux section are two separate ways with which we can manipulate the sound to add external effects. Let's start off by taking a look at the insert section. There's an insert specific to each channel, and every insert has three possible functions or ways of being used. The first is as a direct output with no signal interruption to the master. That's when we set it to the first click. The second method is when we use a second click, and this is a direct out with the signal interruption to the master. The third way is the way that we're going to mostly be using them, and that's for a effects loop. This is what the internals of a standard insert cable look like. Fast overview of the aux section, super simple. You take your aux send it out, modify it, return it. Let's take a better look at the inserts, because they're kind of special. When I'm using inserts, and there's one per channel, what happens is if I normally wanted to use, let's say for example, a microphone. So let's plug in a microphone into our setup. That gets into the XLR in or the line input. At that point, it would normally just go down to the faders. If I'm using an insert, that's when the insert is routed out and back in. So it's captured, sent out into our modifier, compressor in this case, and then returned back into the channel strip where we can move down to the fader. The auxes are pretty special too. We have 6 auxes, one each for each of the 16 channels. These are each then controlled by the master send and master return. With this, we can have one effects engine control several channels, unlike the insert, which is a one-to-one. In our case, we're going to be using this old Alice's MIDI verb. That's going to be our reverb effects machine that we're going to be using as an example for our demonstration today. To make it as simple as possible, we're going to be using the left input and the left output so that we can balance things out and use reverb as our demonstration. Let's make sure that we're properly plugged in and set up to accept our unit. Our MIDI verb is going to be ready. We're going to take our aux send number 1 into the left input. On the output, on the left output, we're going to put it into the aux channel 1, aux return channel. Once that's done, we're ready to control things from the top. Per channel, I can choose which channel is going to have reverb. In our demonstration, we're going to use aux channel 1, which we're going to send it to the master send, and then it's going to be returned by the aux master return. That's going to finally define what kind of level of reverb we're going to get. The pre or post fader control button decides whether or not the fader controls not just the volume of the sound, but the volume of the reverb. There are times that we don't want it to happen, and there are times that we do. In this scenario, I want my volume to follow my reverb. Let's take a look and see how this is done real life. If we have properly set up the plugins on our aux in and aux out and on our MIDI reverb effects unit, there are 3 things that we need to do to be able to turn on the effect. The first thing is we're going to turn on the aux 1 and send some volume or some of the information that's being captured by the microphone that I'm speaking on and getting ready to send it. Then I need to turn on the master aux send, and we'll set that up to approximately halfway as well. And the final thing is we need to have something come back or injected back into the aux so that we can hear it. And that's done by the master aux return. So as I crank this up, you're going to start to hear that there's a little bit of reverb, and it starts to go more and more and more and more. Okay? So this is just for the output. What happens when I turn this down? And now I'm going to start recording here. This is something that I want to show you that's very particular for how it works. I'm going to start to just record here, okay? Now, as we're recording on this channel, I'm going to turn the effects up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm going to stop the recording right here. Let's turn off the effect for a moment. What I want you to do is I want to now demonstrate what happens when we play this one right back. So if I play this back, what are we going to hear? Well, for me to be able to hear it, first I need to set it to, oops, wrong button. I have to set it to line in. So that way, now when I'm recording, I'm not hearing the input from the microphone anymore on the mixer. But if I come here and I want to play it back, I want you to know something very specific. Now, as we're recording on this channel, I'm going to turn the effects up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm going to stop the recording right here. Okay. So the big thing is we didn't hear any reverb. Why not? Well, you have to remember the aux sends and aux out are being sent to the master mix. The master mix is not what's being captured here. If you wanted to write your effects to the file, you need to be recording it after the main mix. And the only place to do that here is with this. When I have the mix down channels 1 to 16, okay, and we're going to have, we hear them here. What I'm going to do first, I'm going to now mute this original file that we did. We're going to now go to the beginning. I'm going to set my channels 15 and 16, turn them on, and we're going to raise the information so it gets sent to the master mix. We're now going to hear what is sent to the master mix. Okay, here we go. Just to play that part again. Now, as we're recording on this channel, I'm going to turn the effects up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm going to stop the recording right here. Clearly, we've heard that on the master mix output, this has been captured. So what are we looking at? We're looking at that the aux inputs, the only place that we're going to hear these inputs is on the master mix output. So this reverb effect, if I wanted it to be burned in to the file, the only way that I could do this is when I capture the main mix. Or if I was recording it and then I set it up on the file and I added it manually later on and then rendered that file. But that's going to be in the next section when we're talking about the internal effects. I just wanted you to note that that's the best way to make it work in this section. Okay, so if I come here and I mute this now, my original file has no reverb, right? So if I come here and I start playing that again, now as we're recording on this channel, I'm going to turn the effects up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm going to stop the recording right here. We're listening to the actual output of the master mix. And if the master mix has no effects on it, which would be done if I set this up by sending some to the master mix, and then returning, that's the only way that's going to happen. Right now, we're not going to hear anything simply because we're listening to the firewire. We are not listening to the mixer. Next section here is how to use effects when we're talking about in the box. For my example, I've used my in the box template, and what we're going to do is just basically show you in its most primitive form the way that I use this. Okay, this is my preferred method of using. I like to do everything in the box in terms of setting levels, etc. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is we need to record a little something. So we're going to have our incoming instruments, right? So I'm going to have my Mackie mixer set with the firewire send signal in the up position so that it receives. I've gain staged properly. I have it set up so that it sends to 15 and 16. And I've got a little bit of unity set to the master mix so we can see the output. And as you can see by the meters here, my microphone is registering. Next thing we do, let's arm the channel and let's create our first little recording. This is recording number 1, and I'm going to be now recording my voice onto the DAW. All right, let's find out if that heard anything. And I've purposely left record monitoring on for one little specific reason, because I want to hear the effects as they're applied to my voice a little bit later on in this section, so I can hear the effects. If this is turned off, I'm not going to be able to hear the output. So we can come here, let's leave that turned on, and I can hear myself. Now, the next step, there are 2 places that we can do the effects. We have on the input channel and we have it on the track. I always use the track. So let's come here. I'm going to just choose this because it's ugly and it's very, very evident. So I've turned that off before I said anything, and I'm going to leave it for the first part here. I'm going to without, and then I'm going to add it as we go into this part here. So as I play this file that I've captured, let's listen to it. So let's see if it gives me any kind of an output. We'll now be listening to the output from the Mackie mixer.
This is recording number 1, and I'm going to be now recording my voice onto the DAW.
Wow, okay. That was pretty good. Now, it's pretty evident that I did that. But when I did that, did I burn anything onto this file? No.
This is recording number 1.
Okay, I didn't do anything here to this, okay? So we didn't affect anything. What if I wanted you to now hear the results? Well, to hear those results, I need to render the file, okay? But I'm going to turn this back up a little bit so we can hear a little bit of that reverb coming in. I'll make it a little bit over the top again, okay? Just so it's really obvious in the rendered file. Here's how we render a file. Okay, so right now I've rendered the file. Let me actually physically take that off. I'll even delete it from here so that there is no effect anywhere. And we're going to now bring up that file. Okay, so there's that file.
This is recording number 1, and I'm going to be now recording my voice onto the DAW.
Pretty evident that I have reverb burned onto the outputted file. And that's cool, because what if I wanted to say, holy mackerel, that was like way too much reverb. If I had burned it onto that file, it would be unchangeable. Like this, here, it is still in its original untouched format. So what that means is that we can make continual changes. And then once it's set up, we can then render the file. Here is interesting. Now we're going to set up a little multi-track. Now I am going to just delete or not delete, but unmute these two. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place this here roughly, and I'm going to really just sort of cut that so it makes it easier for us. Now, evidently, this is going to be not too exciting, but the fact is we're going to try to set up a multi-track recording. So if I want to do a multi-track recording at this point, let's listen to it and see what it sounds like in its entirety.
This is recording number 1, and I'm going to be now recording my voice onto the DAW.
Okay, that was not too great. The music was too loud, the voice was too soft. What happens? Okay, so what I can do is I can come here and turn these down. So if I'm going to take my channel 7 and 8, let me just select my channel 7 and channel 8, and I'm going to turn them down equally. Whoops, come here, that did not select. Always works better when you press the right buttons, right? So here we go. And now, well, hold on, now I have a mismatch here. There we go, here we go. Okay, select and select. And we're going to turn these both down. And that was kind of a little bit not high enough because it was captured, but it wasn't normalized. So what we'll do is let's normalize it. But I'm going to turn it down. Let's turn off the arming so that we can now see what we're doing here. Let's play with this a bit.
This is recording number 1, and I'm going to be now recording my voice onto the DAW.
Cool. Let's put this even lower and bring that back and see how it turns out.
This is recording number 1, and I'm going to be now recording my voice onto the DAW.
Okay. Cool. Now, what if I wanted to put a reverb on the voice a little bit, and I don't want it here? Well, there's a couple of different ways to do it. I can actually create a reverb aux and route everything to it. So what I mean by is if I needed to have 5 or 6 channels that needed the same reverb, I can set it up and control it through an extra channel here, but we're not going to go into that. This is not a Reaper course, but I just wanted to show you the basics of what I'm doing. So come here. Let's add that super strong, ugly reverb. We're going to turn it down. Let me see if I can just turn it up a little bit, ish. Okay. We can come here, then we just listen to that. Let me go back to the beginning. Let's hear what it sounds like. We're now switching to the output on the Mackie mixer.
This is recording number 1, and I'm going to be now recording my voice onto the DAW. This is recording number 1, and I'm going to be now recording my voice onto the DAW.
Let's say that this is what I wanted as a final output. Nobody, don't throw rocks at me. This is just an example. Okay. I'm going to just close that. Going to listen to it.
This is recording number 1.
And that's the way I liked it. Okay. So now I'm going to come here. Let's render that. And let's find out. Is it going to render for me the music in the background with the voice, with the reverb? Let's find out.
This is recording number 1, and I'm going to be now recording my voice onto the DAW.
So you can see that it has done that. And that's how we use effects internally. So when we say effects, I mean, I don't have to just use the reverb. I use that reverb because it was obnoxiously obvious when I'm using it, when I'm not using it. So it's kind of cool. But that is how you use effects using it in the box.